The throne room went silent the moment the guards dragged me forward, my hands still burning from the reactor coolant I had touched an hour earlier. Every alien eye in that chamber was fixed on me, and none of them looked friendly. My name is Daniel Ashford, and 3 hours ago I was just an engineer on a cargo hauler that had no business being anywhere near the Velkari royal fleet. Now I was standing in front of the Velkari queen herself, my uniform scorched, my ears still ringing from the explosion that should have killed everyone on her flagship. The queen's name was Threa Sol Velkar, and she sat on a throne made of black crystal that seemed to drink the light around it. Her skin shimmered faint silver under the chamber's glow, and her eyes, sharp and golden, studied me the way a predator studies something it has not decided whether to trust or destroy. "You entered a restricted reactor core," she said, her voice low and controlled, "without authorization, without a suit rated for that radiation, and without any guarantee you would survive." "I saw the pressure readings jump on the monitor outside," I said. I didn't have time to ask permission. A murmur spread through the court. Advisors in long violet robes shifted uncomfortably, whispering to each other in a language I did not understand but could feel the disapproval in. One of them, an older man with a jagged scar across his throat, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this human violated 17 protocols. He should be punished, not questioned." The Queen raised one hand, and the room fell silent again. "If he had not violated those protocols," she said, "my daughter would be dead. All of you would be dead. This ship would be drifting debris." That was when I noticed her. Standing near the Queen's throne, half hidden behind a pillar of dark stone, was a young woman with the same silver-tinted skin as her mother, but her eyes were a deep shade of blue instead of gold. She wore simple white robes, nothing like the elaborate court dresses around her. Her name, I would later learn, was Illyra. She had been the one trapped near the coolant chamber when the reactor began to fail. I had pulled her out through a service hatch seconds before the pressure surge would have flooded the corridor with radiation. I barely remembered doing it. Adrenaline does strange things to memory. "Approach," the Queen said. I stepped forward, careful not to trip over the polished floor, painfully aware that every guard in the room had a weapon pointed somewhere near my general direction. "You saved my daughter's life," the Queen said. "Do you understand what that means among my people?" "Honestly, no," I admitted. "I'm still trying to understand why the floor here is see-through." A ripple of quiet laughter passed through a few of the younger courtiers before they caught themselves and straightened their faces. The Queen's mouth twitched, almost a smile, though she buried it quickly. "Among the Velkari," she continued, "when someone performs a service so great it cannot be repaid with wealth or rank, the crown offers the highest gift it possesses." I had no idea where this was going, but something in the way the court leaned forward told me it was significant. "I am offering you my daughter's hand," the Queen said. "Marriage to Illyra would bind your name to our royal line. You would have wealth beyond anything your species has ever known, protection for your people, and a seat of power in this empire that no human has ever held." The silence that followed was heavier than the one before. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting, expecting. Somewhere behind the Queen, Illyra's expression had gone carefully blank, the kind of blank that people wear when they are hiding something they are not allowed to show. I should have said yes immediately. I understood enough by then to know this was not a request. It was an honor, a political gift, something no one in this room had ever imagined being refused. My crew back on the hauler would probably faint if they heard what was being offered to a random engineer who fixed reactor leaks for a living. But something about the whole thing did not sit right with me. "Can I ask a question first?" I said. The Queen's eyebrows lifted slightly. "You may. Does she want this?" The room went so still I could hear the faint hum of the ship's engines beneath the floor. The scarred advisor's jaw dropped open. Somewhere near the back, a guard shifted his weapon as if my words themselves were a threat. "Excuse me?" the Queen said, and for the first time since I had entered the room, her voice lost its perfect control. "Your daughter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though my knees felt like they were made of wet paper. "Does she want to marry me? Because where I come from, marriage isn't something you give as a reward. It's something two people choose together. I don't even know her. She doesn't know me. I just happened to be near a broken hatch at the right moment." The advisor with the scar stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "You dare question the Queen's generosity? This is the greatest honor any outsider has ever received." "I'm not questioning the honor," I said. "I'm questioning whether anyone bothered to ask her." I turned slightly, looking past the Queen toward Illyra. She had not moved, but her blue eyes had widened just enough that I noticed. It was the first real expression I had seen from her since I walked into the room. Your Majesty, I said, turning back to the Queen. I'm grateful, I mean that, but I can't accept a person like she's a medal you're pinning on my chest. If your daughter wants to sit down and talk with me, actually talk, not because a crown told her to, but because she wants to, then I'll gladly listen. But I won't say yes to marrying someone who never got asked what she wanted. For a long moment, nobody in that chamber moved. Even the air seemed to hold still, waiting for the Queen's reaction. I fully expected to be dragged out and thrown into whatever passed for a Velkari prison cell. Instead, she stared at me with an expression I could not quite read, somewhere between disbelief and something sharper, something almost curious. You refuse the crown's offer, she said slowly. Not because you find my daughter unworthy, but because you believe she should have a voice in her own future. Where I'm from, I said, everyone should have a voice in their own future, even princesses. The scarred advisor opened his mouth to protest again, but the Queen lifted her hand and he fell silent instantly, though his eyes still burned with disapproval. Illyra, the Queen said, without turning around, step forward. Illyra moved from behind the pillar, her steps careful and measured, though I noticed her hands were trembling slightly at her sides. She stopped a few feet from the throne, eyes lowered at first, then slowly raised to meet her mother's gaze. In 18 years, the Queen said, has anyone in this court ever asked you what you wanted? Illyra hesitated. The question hung in the air, and I realized, watching her face, that the answer was already obvious before she spoke. No, Mother, she said quietly. Not once. The Queen's expression shifted, something flickering behind her golden eyes that looked almost like regret, though it vanished as quickly as it appeared. She turned back to me, studying me the way someone studies a puzzle piece that does not fit the picture they expected, yet somehow completes it anyway. Among my people, she said, power is measured by how much control you can take. Loyalty is bought with rank. Marriage is a tool, not a bond. I offered you the greatest gift my empire has, and you handed it back to me because you thought a girl's opinion mattered more than an empire's tradition. I didn't hand it back, I said. I just think the gift belongs to her, not to me. The Queen rose from her throne for the first time since I had entered the chamber. She was taller than I expected, and the whole court seemed to lean back slightly as she stepped down toward me. You could have taken everything, she said. Wealth, protection, power. No one would have blamed you. Maybe not, I said, but I'd have to live with it. She studied me a moment longer, then turned to her daughter. Illyra, what do you want? It was such a simple question, yet the entire room reacted as if the ship itself had shifted on its axis. Illyra's eyes filled with something I could only describe as quiet disbelief, as if she had waited her whole life to hear those exact words and never truly believed she would. I want to talk to him, she said, glancing toward me, a small, careful smile forming on her lips. Not because you're offering me to him, because I want to know the man who thought my choice mattered more than his own reward. The court erupted into hushed whispers, some scandalized, some intrigued, but the Queen silenced them again, with a simple raised hand. Then talk, she said. Not as a princess and her prize, as two people deciding their own future. She turned to me one last time, her golden eyes narrowing slightly, though this time there was no anger in them, only calculation. The kind of look a leader gives when she realizes she has learned something new about the universe. You are a strange creature, Daniel Ashford, she said. You could have claimed a throne, and instead, you gave my daughter something no one in this empire ever offered her, a choice. That's just how we do things, I said. Where I'm from, the best gifts are the ones nobody's forced to accept. The Queen studied me a moment longer. Then, to the shock of every advisor in that chamber, she actually smiled. Perhaps, she said, humanity has more to teach this empire than we ever expected. Behind her, Illyra stepped closer, her blue eyes steady on mine, no longer hidden behind pillars or silence, but standing there as herself, for what looked like the very first time. And for the first time since I had been dragged into that throne room, I realized I was not afraid anymore.